So I'm guessing by virtue that you're a part of this community that you already appreciate how important it is to have connections and a strong network around you with great relationships with other people, because after all, if you could have done it on your own, you'd have already done it, probably, right? So my book recommendation today is a book called Never Eat Alone. It's written by Keith Ferrazzi and Tar Raj, and it's a book around the success that Keith Ferrazzi attributed to the fact that he had connections with thousands of people and built really successful careers and businesses off the back of those connections. So he talks about practical proven principles, which include don't keep score, making sure that other people get what they want too, so it's not all about I've done a favour for you and then I'm expecting one back. Ping constantly, reaching out to your contacts all the time, not just when you need something, but all the time to keep in touch. Never eat alone, so effectively invisibility is a fate worse than failure, and becoming the king of content, so how you use social media to make meaningful collections. There's a ton of suggestions, ideas, tips, hints, and frameworks to be able to use in the book. And we all know that the world we live in is now a very small place. Everybody's connected to somebody who's connected to somebody, and you never quite know where the next conversation or the next connection will take you. In fact, in the book, Keith writes about the psychologist Dr. Stanley Milgram's study that he did in 1967, where he ran an experiment to set out that the big impersonal world is actually quite a small and friendly one. So bearing in mind this is 1967, so way before social media and things like that. In Milgram's experiment, he created the notion of 6 degrees of separation. You might probably heard about that. In the experiment, he sent out a package to a few hundred randomly selected people in Nebraska with the instructions that they were to forward the package to an anonymous stockbroker in Boston whom they did not know. Each person could send the packet only to someone whom they knew on a first-time basis. So they're sending it to someone they don't know, and they can only send it to somebody who they did know with the hope that it gets to that person. And they were to send it to somebody who they thought was more likely to know the stockbroker, more likely than themselves. About a third of the letters actually reached their destination after an average of 6 mailings. That's where the 6 degrees of separation come from. What was surprising, though, is that the majority of those letters were actually passed through the hands of the same 3 Nebraskans. So all of those contacts from all of those people sending that letter actually then ended up passing through the same 3 people. So it's a very small world, and obviously with social media and things these days, the connections are getting less and less and less from one person to another. A couple other highlights from me which I thought were really useful, and there's tons in here, so you're going to find a lot more than this. Is 80% of building and maintaining relationships is just staying in touch. He calls it pinging. It's a quick and casual way, casual greeting, and it can be done in a number of creative ways. So once you develop your style, you'll find it easier to stay in touch with more people than you've ever dreamed of in less time than you've ever imagined. And I think sometimes we're a bit guilty of having to have something really valuable to say when we want to keep in touch with somebody. We become ever so busy doing stuff, getting distracted, that sometimes it's easy to forget just that casual message, phone call, or whatever it might be, just to say hi, how are things going. Another point which I'll read out is there's nothing wrong with looking for ways to spend time with people who have accomplished more and have more wisdom than you. Once you put yourself in position to connect with the famous and powerful, the key is not to feel if you're undeserving or as an imposter. You're a star in your own right with your own accomplishments, and you have a whole lot to give the world. And again, I think that's another thing. Sometimes we can play tricks on ourselves by thinking other people are successful because they're massively different from ourselves. But the reality is we're all human. We're all made from the same stuff ultimately. So I highly recommend it if you're interested in really strengthening your relationships and building a strong network with more and more people. It's a great book to read. It's quite in depth, quite heavy, but it is full of great ideas. So hope you enjoy, and would love to hear any feedback or comments of what you think of the book, if you've already read it or when you read it, in the community chat here in the No Limits community membership program. Speak to you soon. Bye bye.